You're not gonna believe what happened when I refused to let a neighbor use my water to fill their giant backyard pool. It started off like any other day, just me watering my garden, minding my own business, when this woman, who I've seen around the neighborhood a few times, walked over and asked if she could borrow my hose. I thought she was joking at first, but no, she was dead serious. She wanted me to run my water all day to fill up her pool, for free. I politely said no, explaining that water's expensive and I'm not about to fund someone else's backyard vacation. That's when things took a weird turn. Her attitude shifted fast, like flipping a switch. Next thing I know, she's storming off, yelling something about her husband. A few minutes later, he pulls up, in a police vehicle. That's when it hit me. She called her husband, a cop, to try and intimidate me. He gets out, looking all official, and starts questioning me like *** did something wrong. I kept thinking, **, is this really happening? Over a garden hose **. Things kept escalating from there, and let me tell you, it got tense. Lines were crossed, and let's just say, the situation didn't end the way they thought it would. You won't believe what happened next. So here I am, standing in my front yard, still holding the hose, trying to wrap my head around why this is even happening. The woman, let's just call her Karen for now, was pacing at the edge of her driveway, arms crossed, clearly waiting for her husband to handle me. Now, I didn't know at first that he was an actual police officer, but the second he stepped out of that marked car in full uniform, it clicked. This wasn't just a petty neighbor dispute anymore. It felt like she was using his badge as a weapon. He walks over with that fake polite tone, asking questions like, "Is there a reason you're refusing to cooperate with your neighbor?" I blinked. Cooperate? Like I owed them something. I calmly explained that it's *my water, *my bill, and I never agreed to help them in the first place. But he just kept pressing, acting like I was being unreasonable. Meanwhile, Karen's over his shoulder throwing in little jabs like, "See, I told you he's difficult, and he's always got an attitude." I started to wonder, was this about the water at all? Or was this something deeper? I noticed a few other neighbors peeking from behind blinds. That's when I realized this whole thing might be about to blow up bigger than I ever imagined. As the officer stood there, I could feel the pressure mounting. His presence felt more like a command than a request, like he was trying to subtly force me into submission. And Karen, she was practically hovering behind him, feeding him lines as if I was some sort of criminal. I kept trying to stay calm, but I could feel my blood starting to boil. This wasn't just about water anymore, it was about control. I asked him, "Why is this even a police matter? It's just a neighborly request." But instead of answering, he just gave me this look, like I was the one overreacting. "It's a simple favor. Why make it difficult?" he said. The longer I stood there, the more I realized how manipulative this whole thing felt. It was obvious Karen wasn't just mad about the water. She'd been looking for a way to start trouble, to make me look like the bad guy. There was a history between us that I hadn't even known about. I hadn't realized it, but apparently I'd unintentionally rubbed her the wrong way in the past with some minor thing. Maybe it was that time I didn't invite her to a neighborhood party or ignored her at a block meeting. Whatever it was, she had been holding on to it. I could feel eyes on me from across the street. The neighbors who had been quietly watching from their windows were now starting to whisper amongst themselves. Suddenly, I felt like I was being judged by everyone around me, like I had done something wrong by standing my ground. It was as though Karen had made me the villain in a story I didn't even know I was part of. That's when Karen took things a step further. She pulled out her phone and started recording. "Maybe you'll listen to the law if it's on camera," she said with a smirk. The tension in the air grew thick as she aimed the camera at me and her husband, the cop. I had no idea what she was trying to prove, but I knew one thing for sure: this was far from over. And with every passing second, it felt like I was losing control of the situation. The camera light on Karen's phone blinked on, and I could feel my stomach tighten. She was trying to trap me, to paint me as some kind of villain in front of the entire neighborhood. I could see it in her eyes. This wasn't just about water. It was about winning, about getting me to back down, and I wasn't sure how far she was willing to take it. The officer, her husband, stood there, clearly waiting for me to crack. The whole situation felt surreal. I had never been in a confrontation like this before, let alone with someone who held a position of power. I glanced around, and the few neighbors still peering out their windows were starting to look uncomfortable. I could sense they didn't know whose side to take, but they were definitely watching, and the last thing I wanted was to give them a reason to think I was the problem. Karen, however, wasn't backing down. She started yelling now, her voice sharp. "I'm going to report this to your landlord. You're harassing me," she screamed. I was floored. Harassing her? It was the other way around. And now the cop, her husband, was standing there, not doing a thing. He just looked at me, like he was waiting for me to apologize or something. I could feel my chest tighten as she raised her phone even higher, almost daring me to do something, anything, that would give her a reason to escalate things further. My mind was racing. Should I just walk away and let it go? Could I afford to make the situation worse? But then the thought crossed my mind. What if this wasn't just about the water? What if Karen had been planning this for a while, looking for any excuse to cause trouble? I was beginning to wonder if she had a bigger agenda, one I didn't know about. Before I could even process what to do next, I heard it. The unmistakable sound of sirens in the distance. It wasn't just a few random police cars. This was something bigger, and my heart skipped a beat as the realization hit me. Had Karen already escalated things beyond this confrontation? Was this just the beginning of something I had no control over? The sirens were getting closer. I had no idea what was coming next. The sirens grew louder, and my pulse raced. I couldn't shake the feeling that things were about to spiral out of control, but I wasn't prepared for what happened next. As the police cars turned the corner, I noticed something strange. They didn't stop at the end of the street. They pulled right into Karen's driveway. My stomach dropped. It wasn't just one or two officers. There were at least 4, and they were getting out of the cars, all looking serious. Karen's face lit up when she saw them. She stood a little taller, like she was about to win a battle she had been planning for days. Her husband, the officer, just stood there, barely moving as she exchanged a few quick words with the new arrivals. The officers seemed to acknowledge her with a nod, and I knew, without a doubt, that this wasn't just about water anymore. I was standing there, frozen, as Karen walked toward the new officers. She spoke to them in hushed tones, pointing toward me like I was some sort of threat. I couldn't hear everything, but I could see the way her hand gestured toward my house, and the way her words were directed at the uniformed officers, like they were ready to arrest me for something I hadn't even done. The tension in the air was unbearable. Just as I was about to speak up, one of the new officers walked straight toward me. My heart skipped a beat. "We need to talk," he said, his tone sharp, as though I had already been found guilty of something. I tried to explain, tried to tell him this was all just a misunderstanding, but he wasn't hearing it. He kept his eyes locked on me, not giving me an inch to back out. I glanced at Karen, who was now talking to the other officers with a smug smile, clearly pleased with how things were going. Was she really trying to get me arrested over something as trivial as refusing to let her fill a pool with my water? It didn't make sense. But the more I looked at her, the more I realized this wasn't just about that. There was something deeper happening here, something I was just starting to piece together. As the officer got closer, I could feel my heart racing. The world around me started to blur as my mind scrambled to figure out how to get out of this mess. How had it gotten this far? Why was she doing this? I opened my mouth to protest, but before I could get a word out, I heard a voice from behind me. A neighbor. One of the ones who had been watching from their window. They shouted something I didn't expect, something that made the officer pause. It was too late for me to process what was said before Karen turned sharply and raised her voice over the commotion. What was she about to do next? Karen froze. She hadn't expected anyone to speak up. The officer turned toward the man, his eyes narrowing. "What are you talking about?" the officer asked. The neighbor, looking more than a little nervous but determined, stepped forward. "I saw what happened," he said. Karen's face turned bright red. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. The officer stood there, stunned for a moment, processing what the neighbor had just revealed. The silence was deafening. Then, like a dam breaking, the truth spilled out. Karen, realizing the gig was up, spun on her heels and tried to walk away, but the officer caught her arm gently, though there was a sharpness to his grip. "What's going on here?" he demanded. "You've been using your position to manipulate the situation, haven't you?" Karen's smug expression melted away. She stammered for a moment, unable to form any coherent explanation. The officer turned to me, his tone now more measured. "I'm sorry about this. You're not in any trouble." But before I could breathe a sigh of relief, the twist hit me. The neighbor, who had stepped in to help, turned toward me with a strange look in his eyes. He paused for a second, before blurting out something that made my stomach churn. "You should probably know. I'm the one who fixed that leak last month. The one in your yard," he said, glancing at Karen, then back at me. "That wasn't an accident. I'm the one who told her you'd be easy to manipulate." I stood there stunned, as the full weight of what had just unfolded hit me. My own neighbor, the one I thought had been on my side, had been working with Karen the entire time, setting me up from the start. It wasn't just a simple request for water. It had been a well-planned attempt to ruin me. The officer's face hardened as he processed this new information, but I was too shocked to respond. My world felt like it had turned upside down, and I had no idea how deep the web of lies had gone. Just when I thought the storm was over, I realized that the real battle was only just beginning.